Song Revolution with John Chisum on the NRT Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, John here. I am on a big comfy couch with my dear friend, Petrina Pacheco. Petrina, welcome.
Thank you.
I feel like we're like in a Hollywood studio or something here.
It does feel that way. It's nice.
We are at a beautiful studio called Dark Horse. It's in the Franklin, Tennessee area, and it's a pristine setting. Very many famous people come out here to record. Dolly Parton, Faith Hill, Amy Grant, all kinds of people. And so I just thought this was a fitting place to have our interview today and just get to know you a little bit. Well, Petrina, it's so good to be with you today, and we're going to talk about your new album. We don't really, we call them albums, but you know, CDs, and you even have a little USB card for people who don't use CDs anymore, but called I'm Not Her Anymore. We're going to talk all about those songs, but you and I have been working together about a year and a half or so. And so how did you stumble into NCS world?
I was moved at a retreat. I was 16 when I first felt a calling to sing. And it was a church retreat with the youth at the church I was going to at the time. And I just felt a pulling just to get up and sing. I was singing throughout the retreat, and people were like, wow, you have a really pretty voice. And I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that I could sing. But at the end, at the closing of the retreat, the song came on, and it was Mariah Carey, and it was Hero. That song, Hero. Yeah, so that's a song, it moves you anyway.
It's a great song, a classic.
And so when it came on, one of the leaders there turned around and had the microphone, and she kind of just looked at me, and I said, oh, well, I'd never sang in front of anyone. So I got up and I took the microphone and I started singing. Well, there were so many people who started crying, you know, out in the audience.
Oh, my gosh.
So after that, I started having people asking me to sing here and there.
So you felt this calling a bit when you were 16 in church, but you didn't really live that out. And I know you went through some really rough times. Would you share some of that with us?
So my testimony is my mom and dad, they're still together. I think they just celebrated 53 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I grew up in that environment, in that home life where they were together. And when I was old enough to leave home, I did. I kind of ventured out, and I'm thinking, so my goal was like, I'm going to find a man just like my dad, you know, thinking that they were everywhere, right? Because, I mean,
they're not?
No, but he was there, so he was definitely someone he was, you know, I looked up to. I really admired my parents. I just wanted that for myself. But when I started to go out and hang out with different people, I ended up in a relationship that was totally opposite. So it was an abusive relationship, and I was stuck there for quite a while, for many, many years, and I stopped singing completely.
So you wanted to have a relationship with a man that replicated the feelings you had for your dad, because your dad had been good and you saw their relationship there that was strong, but that really wasn't what happened for you, was it?
So the relationship I ended up in, you know, he pursued me, you know, and I wasn't used to that either, you know, he was just that type of person, real domineering, I guess,
And did he find you because you were singing, still singing in
No,
clubs,
I actually
or?
wasn't singing. I was working at a casino at the time, and he was, I met him there, and I wasn't singing for quite a while. I had stopped a little. I was singing here and there, and when I met him and we started dating, it was just a whole new world for me, you know, because it was like I went from being a daughter to going out and like, okay, you know, it's time to kind of
You were adulting,
up.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're looking for someone to marry and
Right.
spend the rest of your life with. But I just wasn't aware that there were men like him out there.
More of a predator.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now looking back, that's exactly what it was. Because I've never experienced that before. I'd never even seen it and didn't understand it.
Right.
When it started happening, you know, of course he told me it was my fault, and it was because of my actions and the things that I did or didn't do, or, you know, whatever it was that, that I made a mistake.
It's just kind of the classic control freak, abusive.
Yes. I actually had, he's knocked me completely unconscious before, and I've had to get several stitches in my face. To be honest with you, though, the thought of, you know, being away and not knowing where he was, or, you know, and just having to look over my shoulder constantly was more, it was like more intense for me than being there and kind of knowing whether or not, or praying, honestly, is what I did to survive the night. It was more about just control and making sure that I stayed afraid of him enough to where I
Right.
didn't leave.
Right.
Of course, when I did try to leave the first time, it was, I'm going to hurt your family. You know, the whole how that goes. And a lot of women, I understand where they're coming from, because you put yourself, you're thinking, well, I would rather sacrifice myself than my family. And so that's why I stayed for as long as I did, is because the thought of him hurting my family was not something that I was willing to risk. And that was always a fear of mine when the abuse was happening, was that I was going to die at that moment, and my parents wouldn't even know I was there. So it was horrible. It was a lot of mental.
It would have to have been, because
Yes.
your parents thought you were living with a girlfriend.
Yes. And so for them to find out and them not know it, you know.
Right.
But my mom did find out at one point, you know, and it was the time that I'd left, and then he threatened to kill my whole family. And so I ended up going back, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to stay there because at least my family will be safe. I'm not, but at least
So did your boss help you escape?
she said to me, she said, listen, she said, I cannot imagine what you're going through. I can't. She said, but I want you to know that I am here. She said, in the moment that you say you're ready to go, she said, you're welcome back here anytime. You don't have to give me a 2-week notice, nothing. She said, you just get out of here. And so I had someone there who was, you know,
an advocate for you.
yes,
Yeah.
and it was so relieving. It was like, you know, I was like, wow, maybe I can do this. And so other people there, the girls that I worked with at the time, they were so key in helping me realize that there was so much more to me than what he told me there was. Because when I would look in the mirror, I would see what he said. You know, I'd see myself as who he said I was.
Right.
But for them, they would say, no, like, you look in the mirror, look at yourself. You know, you are so much more than that. And they made me start seeing myself different than what I was programmed to see myself.
Right.
And so we had another physical altercation, and I just got to the point to where I said, I can't do this anymore. I didn't tell him, of course, but it was a really, really bad one, and I was pretty certain I was going to die that night. But every time I did feel like that was going to be it, you know, and I prayed, you know, like, get me through this, Lord. When it finally was over, and he took it, and he had my keys, he had my purse, and he made sure there was no chance of escape.
Wow, this
and
sounds
so,
like a movie.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, it felt like it. I mean, looking back, it's like very scary time of my life. And so I knew that night, I said, I'm not doing this anymore. So the next morning when I got up, I was hurt really bad. I could hardly walk. My back was, I remember my back being hurt, and he had choked me. I had bruises all around my neck because he had choked me to the point of almost passing out that night. I told him, I said, I'm going to work. And he said, don't go to work today. You know, I mean, you can't. I mean, you have bruises all over you, you know. And so I said, I have to go to work. And I just knew I had to tell him that. And I said, I have to go to work because I can't call in. And he said, but just stay here, because he knew that it was a bad night. And I said, I have to. I said, I tell you what. And I said, I'll go. I said, and then when I get there, I'll just say, ask him if I can leave and tell him I don't feel well. And he said, okay, that's perfect. Just make sure you come back. And I said, okay. So I got up. I knew I wasn't going to work. I got up and I put my uniform on. I was completely dressed, and I walked out the door, and I said, see ya. I said, you know, I mean, I'll be back and whatever. And I left, and I knew I wasn't going back. So when I left, I called my mom, and I said, today's the day. And she said, oh, praise God. And she just I don't remember, she started crying.
Of course, yeah.
And so she said, I've been having my suitcases packed for 2 weeks now. She was ready. And I had been saving money, and I went to the bank, and I took out, you know, some money I'd been saving so that I could, you know, leave and make it. And then I went into hiding. So I had to go. I went about 10, 11 hours away. Be the light that's shining in the darkest days. You've got to shine out mercy.
So there you are in hiding. You begin drinking.
Yes.
And this goes on for how long?
It lasted about 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where you were just numbing out, using alcohol,
Yes.
you know, to escape.
It was so constant, and I tell you how bad it was. And so I understand how people, you know, if you don't know to turn to God, or if you don't, you turn to something, right, to help you with the pain, to help you get through. So it was so bad at the time that I would wake up, and if I'd wake up around noon, I would fix my first drink at 12:30. Instead of having coffee, I would have, whiskey, and I would just drink again until I'd pass out again. And that was just thank God for the people that I was with, who took care of me, and they didn't quite understand, but they knew that it was something that I guess I needed to do in order to cope. I went down, and it got even darker and darker, and I started gambling. There's a lot of casinos around there, and so gambling and drinking and just partying, a lot of partying, and then it just got to the point where I don't know, I was done. I'd reached the end of myself. I've always known that God was real. It's something I just grew up, I knowing. My mom and dad, they brought us to church. I was in all Sunday schools and the whole 9 yards. But, of course, as soon as I was old enough to make my own decision, I was like, nah, I don't need that. Yeah, I know everything,
Sure you do. Yeah.
So I started going to this church some, a little here and there, and it was really intriguing, to go in there. I love the music. The music is what always drew me to every church.
Of course.
If I heard there was a revival going on, I wanted to go, because the word revival meant good music. And so I wanted to go for that. So this church I was going to, every now and then, I heard there was a revival happening. So I said, I'm going to go to that. I think, I like the music that they play. It's different. We grew up with the hymns and stuff. And so this church was playing more modern, music and contemporary. And I liked the sound of it. We believe Jesus came to the earth, the holy man. And so when I went to the revival that very first day, I was sitting there that night. I'd never met this man, never laid eyes on the speaker. And he was from Baton Rouge, and he had come over there to do the revival. So he was up there talking. And, of course, I wasn't paying any attention to what he's saying, just to be honest with you. The music was over, and I was just kind of like, in my own little world.
Yeah, right.
While he was preaching. So he was probably speaking maybe about 10 minutes, 15 minutes in, and he's about an hour long, speaker. And so I'm sitting there thinking, what can I make God, do? And so I said, okay, I got it. I said, I want you to make that man that's talking right now, I want you to make him stop, like in his tracks, walk up to me, point his finger in my face, and tell me that you have big plans for my life.
Wow, what a bold prayer to put before God.
And then I was even a little more sarcastic, and I said, I want you to make him do it like right now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I said, as soon as I got that out of my mouth, I said, like, now. And that man stopped. He literally stopped.
He did not.
Mr. John, he stopped. No. I can't tell you how many times I tell you this testimony.
I've not heard this.
This is how I knew without a shadow of a doubt. Like, everything left. He stopped what he was doing. He was actually facing that way. I was on this side. I was on the left side of the church. He was facing that way. He literally stopped, and he was looking that way. He turned around and he looked at me. And I was back a ways. I was probably midways back. And he just stared at me, and I was like, oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
And so he walked up to me. He didn't say a word after that. He stopped talking. He turned, he looked at me. He walked directly up to me. And while he was walking up to me, I'm looking like, like what's happening? And he had the microphone in his hand, and he bent down toward me. He put his finger in my face.
He did not.
I promise you. Ask James.
He did not do that.
James got the meeting. I'm telling you. I promise you. This, and I'll tell you why. He put his finger in my face, and he had the microphone in his hand, and he said, "Girl, God does have big plans for your life." And when he did,
I'm getting uncomfortable, because what if God's going to come tell me something like that?
Look, I didn't think he was really going to do it either. I really didn't. I was like, this is really far. It's like, let me try to get something that's like way far-fetched out there.
That was it.
But God knows what we need, right? So when he did that, and he said, girl, God does have big plans for your life. When he did that, I literally jumped up out of my seat, and I told my husband, I said, the only way I can describe it is, how you ever seen The Price is Right? When they call somebody's name, right? They call somebody's name and they're like, come on down.
Come on
You're
down.
the next contestant.
Only
That's
it's God's.
what it felt like. I literally jumped up out of my seat and I was hitting everybody around. Oh my gosh. But the crazy thing about it is nobody knew what happened because it all happened in my head.
In your head?
Yes. Nobody
knew.
My goodness. I thought everybody knew because it was so big.
I'm on the edge of my seat. I had to sit up for that.
I promise you, I'm telling you, this happened. And so when it happened and I jumped up and I was screaming and I was touching people, it's like, yo, did you hear that? And they were like, that's great.
No.
Wonderful. I'm happy for you. You know, nobody understood. So I was just going, oh my gosh. And so he says, get down here. He says, come to the front. And then he started speaking to me and he was like, God's got big plans. He's going to use you in a big way, bigger than you can imagine. All these things. And I was just going, I didn't hear anything he said because I was just like, I can't believe that just happened. I cannot believe that just happened. And I got to see just how real he was. You're my savior, my redeemer. You're my hope and you're my healer. You're the reason that I'm breathing, that I'll make it through the day. You're my hope. So to God,
a transformational moment, a Holy Spirit moment that totally changed the trajectory of your life, and brought your mom's prayers, your dad's prayers, anybody that's been praying for little Petrina, coming out of this terribly abusive situation to now total radical transformation. And so how did the music thing begin to happen? I mean, we talked earlier, songs began to just, we say God dropped songs on me, but I really believe that in your case. They're not always fully crafted, but there's such a deep inspiration there. So we've now come full circle to this. We're going to talk about this in a moment, but how did the music thing start happening and you singing in churches?
So I started singing some there because I didn't miss church after that. That revival went on for months. And I mean, it was so powerful, the things that was happening in the revival, that we were having it 5 days a week, 5 nights a week, 6 nights a week, going to the revival constantly. We were all just excited about it. And they asked me if I wanted to join, and start singing on the praise team, which I was just happy about. But it was so different for me because before, when I sang, I sang for different reasons. And I was used to being, people looking at me and the attention being, but getting up there then, it was like I wanted to hide. And it's like, I just want to be up here because it's amazing, and I want to give thanks and praise to him for what he's done in my life. And I knew it was him, that it's just brought me through it all and kept me alive. I guess that was in 2010, whenever that happened. And it wasn't until about 2012 I really started hearing just melodies, and I was just thinking, I was hearing these songs, and it was more of me kind of singing praise, it was words that God it was like I was just feeling them, and I didn't really know what to do with it then. I just heard I'm not her anymore. And so I had to actually start writing, words like, okay, how do I say I'm not that person anymore? And so now the song has become something.
$1 million title.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
amazing.
like it's a great title. And then you get my email.
Yeah.
And it says, God gave me a song. Now what? And you're intrigued.
What?
You hadn't been reading my other emails, but that one got you. So finally, thank God for that idea. But so we had this talk, and you told me some of these things, but I was pretty intrigued. We started coaching together over about a 3-month period, and we kind of tumbled into this artist development relationship that went beyond just, hey, let's work on your songs, and then good luck, you go do what you want to do, right?
Yes.
And I know that I have, that my primary lane, that I have the gifts of bringing out of songwriters their messages and challenging them and destroying their world a little bit, but but that I want to bring in team members that can do something better than I can, and then we've gone on to do some other things, connect you into management, graphics, and all kinds of things that have helped set the stage for you to step into your ministry. We call it artist development, and there's that artistic side, but for you, this is about ministry. It's about exalting Christ in a deep and wonderful way. But talk about that, the last year that we've been working together on that level. How have you been challenged, and what's been fulfilling in that way for you?
Well, I have to say this, though, and I think I've told you before, but to do the co-writing. I know that we talked about before, a lot of people kind of shy away from that, you know, because they kind of want to do their own thing, or they might be a little nervous with it. And I can't even explain how amazing that was for me, because I learned so much in that session. You know, it worked, and the dynamics of it was like the atmosphere was fully charged.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And we talk about that. My husband and I talk about that, like the moment that, you know, you were working on the chorus for We Believe, you know, you were and you said, hold on a second, I'm hearing something. And then we talk about that. It's like the Holy Spirit was downloading into you.
I remember
at that
moment.
Yes. And it was like, and you were saying, I really hope you like this, you know, and, you know, because it was really awesome. But when it came together, I remember just being so full of emotion and just overwhelmed, you know, with that.
But you leveled up. And so, you know, we had spent these months working on what is great songwriting. How do you really grab people's attention, you know, with rhyme and alliteration and something that's unusual and compelling, as opposed to just blabbing out whatever you're thinking, right?
Yes.
And so when we got to that co-write, it was like, okay, it's like everything we had talked about, it kind of fell in place.
Yes. Leveling up is a very good word to use there. And I remember the moment whenever I would, we were trying to think of lyrics at the time, because we're actually writing the song right then, you know, right then and there together. And I threw out some lyrics there, and you were like, I kind of like that. I was like, yes, you know, because I'm thinking, you know, if he likes that, that means that I must be getting better.
You were, well, you totally did. You know?
You were like, hey, I kind of like that.
So now you have this amazing album, which is so dear to my heart, of course, having worked with you on it. But this is an incredibly listenable album, and it's just one I think that people are going to have on repeat. It's deep ministry, and yet crafted to the point where it can reach a lot of people. And I think that's what's happening for you, is that your desire to share your testimony, not only in song, but in, you know, actually speaking and talking about it. That's happening for you now.
Yes, it is. I've learned that, you know, if it's a call and you know it's a calling on your life that God has, you ask Him to open the doors that are only from Him. And don't let you walk through any that's not from Him, right? Because we could spend so much time wasting on trying to figure things out, you know, when it's not really the route we're supposed to go. So let Him open the doors. And if you feel like it's songwriting and you're wanting to learn the craft of songwriting, He's the man, without a doubt.
I like that.
He can teach you how to do it for sure. But, you know, not just that, though. You are a great coach. I have to add that. You're a great coach in the studio, and I'm thankful that you took the time to come and be in the studio with me. And I'll never forget. And even to this day, my husband will say when I'm singing, you know, let me hear some teeth. He still says that, you know, and at the time I did not understand what you were saying, but whenever I did what you suggested, it made all the difference in the world. So now that's what he says. And so you're a great coach in every area. So don't just limit it to songwriting. You're a great mentor, life coach. You're a great encourager, you know. So
thanks, Petrina.
I'm thankful just to have you in my life. So
well, I'm thankful because just of the work of God in your life long before we ever met. But to be able to be some small part in helping bring these songs and this ministry to the world is so fulfilling for me. So,
that's great.
All right, everybody,
Awesome.
Petrina Pacheco.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for joining us on the show today. I hope that you'll jump over to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com and check out all the resources there to encourage you in your own songwriting. And if you like what we're doing, why not share this episode out on your socials? You can find the link in the show notes. We'll see you next time.